When a billionaire's eviction notice uncovers a family's hidden pain, one man's journey begins, from power and wealth to compassion and hope. In a small American town, the greatest riches aren't money, but kindness, forgiveness, and second chances. The morning was cold, even though it was spring in New York City. Ethan Cole stood at the top of his glass tower, looking out over the skyline. Below him, people hurried to work, carrying coffee cups and tired dreams. Up here, everything looked small, just like it always did. His phone buzzed. "Mr. Cole," said his assistant, Jordan, "about the property in Granger, Ohio." Ethan sighed. "The one with the missed payments?" "Yes, sir. The family is 3 months behind. We've sent notices. It's time to file eviction." "Then do it." There was a pause. Jordan spoke carefully. "Sir, do you want to send someone local to handle it?" Ethan turned from the window. "No, I'll do it myself." Jordan's voice rose in surprise. "You, sir, no offense, but you've never done an eviction in person." "Exactly. I want to see it for myself. I need to understand the people we're dealing with." Jordan didn't argue again. "I'll have the jet ready by noon." Ethan flew into Granger that same day. It was a small town, quiet streets, friendly diners, old houses with peeling paint and American flags waving in the breeze. It was the kind of place he had come from and left behind. The property was on the edge of town. A modest 2-story house with chipped siding and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Weeds had grown through cracks in the driveway, but the lawn was freshly mowed and a child's bicycle leaned against the fence. He walked up the front steps expecting silence, or maybe a shouting match. Instead, he heard laughter, children's laughter. He rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, the door opened. A woman in her 30s stood there. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun. Her eyes looked tired, but her smile was gentle. "Can I help?" "I'm Ethan Cole," he said, pausing. "I'm the property owner." Her smile faded for a moment, but she didn't close the door. "Oh," she said softly, "I suppose you're here about the rent." "Yes," Ethan replied. She looked over her shoulder, then stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "Can we talk out here?" she asked. "I don't want to upset the kids." Ethan nodded. "I'm Claire," she said. "And before you say anything, I know we're behind. I've been trying, really. I just started a job at the diner down the road. My first paycheck comes Friday. I'll pay you something then. Please, just give me a little more time." Ethan was quiet. He had heard excuses before, dozens of them, but this didn't feel like an excuse. It felt like truth. "How many kids?" he asked. "3, she said. "Maya's 8, Luke is 6, and little Emma just turned 3. "And their father?" he asked before he could stop himself. She looked down at the floorboards of the porch. "Gone. Car crash. 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Ethan said. She nodded, and for a moment the wind was the only sound between them. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said, still not looking up. "I didn't plan on falling behind, but everything costs more now. Groceries, gas, daycare. I've applied for help, but it takes time. Sometimes it feels like the world just wants people like me to fail." Ethan opened his mouth, ready to give a speech about business, responsibility, contracts, but nothing came out. Because deep down, he remembered. He remembered what it felt like to come home from school and see a red notice on the door. He remembered how his mother cried in the kitchen, thinking he couldn't hear. He remembered sleeping in the back of their old car for 2 weeks. That was the day he promised himself he'd never be poor again. He worked, he fought, he built an empire, but somewhere along the way, he forgot the pain that built it. "I'm not here to kick you out," Ethan said. Finally, Claire looked up. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. She just nodded and wiped her hands on her jeans. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll make it right. I promise." He nodded too, but something in his chest had cracked. He turned and walked back to the car, his heart heavier than he expected. That night, Ethan stayed in a local motel. It was clean but plain. No valet, no room service, just the sound of trucks passing on the road outside. He sat at the desk, staring at the eviction paperwork. All he had to do was sign it. One signature, and Claire and her kids would be gone. But his hand wouldn't move. He thought of Emma, the baby he hadn't even seen yet, of Maya and Luke laughing behind the door, of Claire's voice when she said, "Sometimes it feels like the world just wants people like me to fail." He stood and walked to the mirror. The man who looked back at him wore a suit worth more than Claire's car. But behind the polished look was a boy who once lost everything. That boy wouldn't have signed the papers either. Ethan went to bed that night without signing anything. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He didn't sleep well. The motel bed was fine, but his thoughts were heavy. He kept thinking about the house, about Claire, about the kids he hadn't met yet. Something inside him wouldn't let go. He drank the motel's bitter coffee, then got in his rental car. He didn't tell anyone he was going back. He just drove. The streets of Granger were quiet, the way small towns always were on a weekday. Morning. He passed old gas stations, a school with kids getting off a bus, and a church with a broken bell. When he reached the house again, he parked down the street and walked the last few steps. He didn't want to scare them. He wasn't sure what he was even going to say. The porch still creaked. A breeze passed through the trees, and the smell of fresh-cut grass floated in the air. Someone had swept the steps. Someone still cared. He knocked gently. After a moment, the door opened. This time a young boy peeked through. His hair was messy, and he held a half-eaten waffle in one hand. "Mom! It's the man from yesterday." Claire appeared, pulling a sweater over her shoulders. She looked surprised, but not angry. "Mr. Cole, I wasn't expecting—" "I know," Ethan said. "I just wanted to check in, see how things were going." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Would you like to come in?" Ethan nodded and stepped inside. The house was small and worn, but it had heart. Family photos lined the hallway, simple ones, some a little faded. A small wooden table sat in the kitchen, cluttered with crayons, cereal bowls, and a baby doll missing an arm. The floor creaked in places, and the ceiling had water stains, but it felt warm. "I'm sorry it's a bit messy," Claire said, brushing crumbs from a chair. Ethan shook his head. "It's lived in. That's not a bad thing." From around the corner, a little girl peeked in. She had curly brown hair and wide, shy eyes. "Hi," Ethan said gently. She didn't answer but hid behind Claire's leg. "That's Emma," Claire said, smiling. "She's still getting used to strangers." A few minutes later, the boy from earlier returned with a cape tied around his neck. "I'm Luke," he said proudly. "I'm a superhero." Ethan smiled. "Nice to meet you, Luke. What's your, superpower?" "Jumping really high," Luke said, then jumped in place to prove it. "And waffles. I wish I had that power," Ethan said with a chuckle. They sat at the table. Claire poured coffee, cheaper stuff than Ethan was used to, but it somehow tasted better. "We don't get many visitors," she said. "I figured that," Ethan replied. He paused. "Claire, I need to be honest with you." She tensed. "You're here about the papers, aren't you?" "I was," he said, "but I didn't sign them. And after coming here again, I'm not sure I can." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but her eyes were still guarded. "Why?" she asked. "People like you don't usually care about people like me." He looked at her. "Maybe I forgot who I used to be." She tilted her head. "You?" "My mom raised me alone too," he said softly. "She worked 2 jobs. We got evicted when I was 10. Slept in our car. I told myself I'd never let anyone take what was mine again. I thought money was the only way to be safe." Claire was quiet. Then she said, "And is it?" He looked around at the house, at the half-colored drawing on the table, at the kid in a cape chasing a kitten down the hall. "No," he said, "it's not." She didn't smile, but there was something softer in her eyes now. "You don't owe us anything," she said. "I know that. You didn't cause our pain. Life did. But thank you for listening." He nodded. I was thinking, Ethan said, clearing his throat. This place needs some work. Maybe I could help. I'm not terrible with a hammer, Claire blinked. You want to fix things here? Yeah, Ethan said. Call it a project. I need to do something that matters. You're serious? He smiled. Very. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood up. Okay, she said. You want to help? The front door sticks, the sink leaks, and don't even get me started on the upstairs toilet. He stood too. Sounds like a plan. That afternoon, Ethan rolled up his sleeves and went to the hardware store. He bought supplies, tools, paint, a new faucet. The cashier looked at him like he was lost. You? Sure you know what you're doing? The man asked. No idea, Ethan said with a grin. When he returned, Luke followed him around, asking questions. Emma eventually sat on his lap while he fixed the faucet. Claire made sandwiches. For a moment it felt like a real home. A place where everyone belonged. Ethan had spent years building condos in cities he didn't care about, investing in things that made numbers grow. But now, with a wrench in one hand and peanut butter on his shirt, he felt more real than he had in a decade. That night, he returned to his motel, exhausted, but full in a way that had nothing to do with food or money. He sat at the desk again and looked at the unsigned eviction papers. He picked them up, then tore them in half. Whatever came next, he knew one thing. This wasn't just about one family anymore. It was about all the ones like them. The quiet houses filled with love, the ones the world forgot, and he wasn't going to forget them again. Claire looked like a woman who hadn't had a real break in years. The dark circles under her eyes didn't come from a bad night. They came from too many nights spent worrying. Bills, groceries, school clothes, daycare. It all added up. And she carried it alone. Ethan saw that now. Not just with his eyes, but with his heart. That morning he showed up again, this time with coffee and bagels. Claire opened the door wearing an apron and a confused look. You really don't give up, do you? Nope, Ethan said, holding up the coffee like a peace offering. Truce? She smiled and stepped aside. Come in. The kids were still in pajamas, dancing around to a morning cartoon. Emma toddled over and tugged on Ethan's pants leg. He picked her up without thinking, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. Careful, Claire said. She might not let you go. I think I'm okay with that, Ethan replied. They ate breakfast. Together, the room filled with light and laughter. But then Claire stood up to clean, and Ethan saw it again. That look in her eyes, that silent weight pressing on her shoulders. You okay? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she sat across from him and folded her hands on the table. I should be angry at you, she said. You own this house. You could have taken it from us with a single piece of paper. I know, Ethan said quietly. But I'm not, she went on, because I think you're trying. And maybe I need to stop pushing everyone away just because I'm afraid of being let down again. Ethan nodded. Can I ask you something? Sure. How do you do it? Every day, Claire laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. I wake up, I get the kids ready, I go to work, I come home, cook dinner, help with homework, clean, and try not to cry in the bathroom. Then I sleep for 4 hours and do it again. She looked him in the eye, because if I don't, who will? Ethan felt something twist in his chest. You ever feel like the world is just built to break you? She asked. He nodded slowly. All the time, Claire sighed. I used to believe things would get better, that hard work would be enough, that if I just pushed through, someday we'd be okay. But now, I just hope I can keep the lights on and get the kids to school on time. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. She'd cried too many times already. There were no tears left. I wish I could fix everything, Ethan said. Claire gave a small smile. You're already doing more than most. Later that day, Ethan offered to drive her to work. She was embarrassed at first. Her car barely started. The back seat was full of toys and juice boxes. But Ethan didn't care. The diner sat on the edge of town. It was the kind of place where the menu never changed. And the waitresses knew your name. Claire worked the morning shift, on her feet for 8 hours straight, smiling at strangers while worrying about bills. Ethan sat in a booth, watching quietly. He saw how hard she worked, refilling coffee, calming a crying toddler, joking with a lonely old man. She made people feel seen. Even when no one saw her, one of the other waitresses leaned over and whispered to Ethan, "You Claire's brother." He shook his head. "Just someone who wants to help." The woman smiled. "Well, she's a good one. Lost her husband, lost her job, still shows up every day. Not many people could do that." Ethan nodded. He already knew. That afternoon he picked up the kids from school. Maya was shy at first, but when he offered her ice cream, she lit up. Luke climbed into the front seat before Ethan could say no, pretending he was driving. Emma sat in the back, humming to herself. They stopped by the park on the way home. The kids ran through the grass while Ethan sat on a bench, thinking. He had never done this before, never picked up kids, never played catch, never pushed a swing. But it felt right, like a piece of his soul was waking up after a long sleep. He watched. Maya helped Emma down the slide and thought, this is what struggle looks like. Not weakness, but strength. Quiet, stubborn, everyday strength. And Claire was the strongest of them all. That night he helped cook dinner, burned the chicken a little, but no one complained. They laughed around the table. The TV was off. The room was full of noise, but it wasn't the kind that hurt. It was the kind that healed. After the kids were in bed, Claire sat on the porch with Ethan. The stars above were faint, but still beautiful. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "That this will all fall apart, that I'll get too comfortable, that you'll leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Ethan said, and for the first time in a long while he meant it. Claire looked at him, her eyes soft. "Why me? Why this family?" Ethan looked up at the stars. "Because I see myself in you, and I've spent years pretending I didn't come from people like you. I forgot what it means to fight for something that really matters." Claire reached over and touched his hand. "You matter too, Ethan, not for what you own, but for what you choose to do with it." That night Ethan didn't return to the motel. He slept on the couch, Emma's teddy bear tucked under his arm. And as he drifted off to sleep, the creaky house breathed around him, quiet, old, alive. He came here to evict a family, but he was the one being brought home. Ethan woke up before sunrise, the first pale light slipping through the living room window. His back ached from sleeping on the old couch, and a baby doll had somehow ended up tucked under his arm. But for the first time in years, his chest felt light. He sat up slowly and looked around the quiet living room. A worn quilt was draped over him. Claire must have placed it there after he fell asleep. The house creaked and groaned, its walls thin, but it still felt more solid than his penthouse in New York. He stood and walked to the window. The street outside was still asleep. He could hear the faint hum of a refrigerator, the soft breathing of a house that, despite its peeling paint and broken things, was still full of life. Ethan thought about his life, about the cold boardrooms, the soulless meetings, the endless chase for more. For years, he thought success meant cutting losses, avoiding risks, staying detached. But something in him had changed. No, something in him had broken. And maybe that break had finally let the truth in. Claire walked into the kitchen a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes. "Morning," she said, tying her robe. "Morning," Ethan replied. "You sleep okay?" She shrugged. "As good as I ever do." Ethan took a deep breath. "I was thinking, what if I made things official?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "Official? What if I gave you the house?" Her eyes widened. "What?" "I've seen what you're trying to build here. A home, a life. I want to help, not just patch things, but really give you a foundation." Claire was silent. "You don't have to decide now," Ethan added quickly. I can't keep living like everything is numbers and profit. You showed me that. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Ethan, she said, I'm not a charity case. I know. I don't want a gift. Because you pity me. I don't pity you. I admire you. You've done more with nothing than most people do with everything. She stared at him for a long time. Then she looked down at her hands. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll think about it, Ethan replied gently. I will. Later that day, Ethan walked downtown. He wanted to be alone, to think. The streets of Granger were quiet and familiar now. He stopped by the local school, then the church, then the park. Everywhere he went he saw people, real people, fighting quiet battles. He remembered how, as a boy, he and his mother had lived in places like this, how she'd stretched every dollar, skipped meals so he could eat. She used to whisper, "This world isn't built for people like us, but we'll build anyway." She died before she could see his first million, before she could see the skyscraper with his name on it. And somehow, standing in the middle of Granger, that million felt empty now. He sat on a park bench and stared at the grass. A little girl ran past laughing. Her shoes were too big, her jacket too thin, but she didn't care. That was when Ethan made his decision. That evening he returned to the house with papers, not eviction notices, but ownership documents. Claire opened the door, her arms covered in flour from baking cookies with the kids. "Hey," she said, smiling, "you're back." "I brought something," he said. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one that had been covered in crayons and toast just days ago. Ethan laid out the papers. "I'm transferring the deed to your name," he said. Claire's hand covered her mouth. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. No strings, no rent. It's yours." I can't." "Yes, you can," he said gently. "You've already earned it. This house has more love in its walls than any mansion I've ever seen. You just need the chance to make it yours." She stared at the papers, then at him. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Keep making it a home, keep fighting, and maybe help someone else one day, the way I hope I helped you." Claire reached over and took his hand. "I will," she said. And for the first time, since her husband died, she felt safe again. That night, they sat on the porch while the kids played inside. The stars were brighter than usual. "I was supposed to be gone after the first day," Ethan said. Claire smiled. "Yeah, well, plans change. I think I'm done with the boardroom for a while. What will you do?" "Not sure. But I know it'll involve helping people who get overlooked. People like you." She looked at him. "You've changed, Ethan." He nodded. "So have you." Inside, the kids were laughing again. The house still creaked, the ceiling still leaked, but it felt stronger now, like the walls had finally found their purpose again. Ethan had come to evict a family, but what he found was a broken version of himself, and a chance to rebuild, not just the house, but his heart. The next morning, Ethan sat in his car with a thick envelope in his hands. It was the original eviction paperwork, still unsigned, still official. He hadn't thrown it away yet. A part of him had kept it as a reminder of how close he came to ruining something beautiful. He stared at it. One signature. That was all it would have taken. A scratch of ink, and Claire would have had 30 days to pack up her kids and disappear. Another family forgotten. Another house flipped for profit. He swallowed hard. His fingers gripped the paper tightly. The thought made him sick. Why did I even keep this? He asked himself. Because the truth was, this paper wasn't just about a house. It was about who he used to be. Back at the house, Claire was helping Luke with his math homework. Ethan had promised to fix the back steps, but he stood frozen in The living room, still holding the envelope, Emma toddled up and tugged on his sleeve. "You sad?" she asked with wide eyes. Ethan looked down at her, then dropped to one knee and hugged her tight. "No, sweetheart, I'm okay now." She giggled and ran off, her curls bouncing behind her. Claire looked up from the kitchen. "You sure you're okay?" Ethan hesitated. "Can I show you something?" She nodded. He walked over and placed the envelope on the table. Claire recognized it instantly. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. "This is the eviction notice," he finished. "The original one. I never signed it. But I didn't throw it away either." Claire stared at it, then at him. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to see how close I came to being the villain in your story." She said nothing. The silence was heavy. "I kept it to remind myself what power looks like," Ethan said, "and how easy it is to use it the wrong way." He pulled the paper out of the envelope and stared at it for a moment. Then, without saying a word, he tore it in half, and then again, and again, until nothing was left but scraps. Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "Yes, I did," Ethan replied. "For me." That night, Ethan went for a walk. The stars above the town blinked like slow, steady reminders that life keeps going, even when it feels like everything's about to fall apart. He walked past other houses like Claire's, run down, porches, cracked driveways, plastic toys scattered in yards, places most investors would overlook. But now Ethan saw them differently. Each one had a story, a fight, a family doing their best. He thought about the man he used to be, the one who wore suits like armor, the one who believed failure only happened to lazy people. He'd been wrong. Failure could happen to anyone, even the hardest workers, even people with good hearts. He'd watched his mother break her back to keep them afloat. And still, they lost everything, just like Claire almost did. The paper he'd torn up might have changed the course of her life forever. And no one would have known. It would have been one of 100 decisions that week, one more form filed. But to Claire and her kids, it would have meant the end of everything. He couldn't forget that. The next day, he drove 2 towns over to visit the county records office. He had the new deeds signed, notarized, and filed. The house was officially Claire's now. No more fear. No more wondering if someone would knock on the door and ask her to leave. When he got back, Claire was in the yard pulling weeds, Emma sitting. Beside her, playing with dandelions. He walked up and handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Open it." She did. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's official," Ethan said. "You own the house." Claire covered her mouth. "You really did it. I told you I would." She threw her arms around him and held tight. "You don't know what this means." "I think I do," he whispered, "but I also know it's only the beginning." That evening, the family invited him to stay for dinner. They had spaghetti and garlic bread, and the kids made a thank you card with glitter and crayons. It wasn't fancy, but it hit Ethan harder than any trophy or award he'd ever received. After the kids went to bed, Ethan and Claire sat on the front steps, their plates still warm in their laps. "I still can't believe all this," Claire said. "A week ago I was scared we'd be living in our car again. Now you're safe," Ethan finished, "and it's going to stay that way." Claire looked at him. "Why this house, Ethan? Why us?" He paused. "Because something in me broke when I saw you that day, but in the best way possible. You reminded me who I used to be, and who I still want to be." She reached over and gently touched his arm. "You didn't just save us. You saved yourself too." Ethan didn't reply, but inside he knew she was right. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, he sat alone in the living room. The soft hum of the fridge, the creak of the wood, the faint snore of Luke down the hall, it all felt like music. He took out his phone and deleted the last copy of the eviction file from his email. Gone. For good. No more turning back. No more forgetting No more pretending the world didn't need to change. He had power, and now he finally knew how to use it. Rain poured down outside, hammering the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. Inside the house, Claire pulled a towel from the kitchen and ran to the back hallway. The bathroom door was stuck again. It had been breaking for weeks, the frame swollen from water damage. Tonight, with the storm raging outside, it refused to budge at all. Claire sighed, trying to jiggle the handle, her bare feet slipping on the wet floor. She didn't care about doors right now. The bills were piling up again. Her job had cut her hours, and Luke had come home from school with bruises on his arm, kids calling him poor, saying his family was trash. When she finally forced the door open, the top hinge cracked, the door swung crooked and hung there like a broken promise. She sat down hard on the hallway floor. For the first time in weeks, she cried. Ethan had gone into town that morning, checking in on a local youth center he'd been funding quietly. By the time he got back, the rain was still falling, and the kids were watching a movie in the living room. Claire was at the kitchen table with a rag and a screwdriver, trying to fix the door. He stepped inside and shook off his coat. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away, just kept turning the screwdriver, her jaw clenched. "Door's busted," she muttered. "Won't shut right. I keep trying to fix it, but it keeps breaking." "I can take a look at it," Ethan offered. She stood abruptly, eyes flashing. "It's not just the door, Ethan," she snapped. "It's the car, and the fridge, and the job, and Maya needing new shoes, and Luke." Her voice broke. "He got into a fight at school, because someone said we're not worth anything." Ethan froze. Claire's hands trembled. "I try so hard, I really do, but every time I patch one hole, 5 more open up, and I'm so tired of pretending I'm okay." Ethan walked to her slowly. "You don't have to pretend," he said. She sat down, covering her face. "I've held this family together with duct tape and prayers," she whispered. "And some days it feels like I'm failing anyway." Ethan pulled out a chair beside her. "You're not failing," he said. "You're surviving, and that's the bravest thing anyone can do." That evening, he drove to the local hardware store, bought wood, hinges, nails, sealant, and even paint. He came back soaked, but determined. He worked through the night. Luke helped. So did Maya. They fixed the door first, sanded and sealed it, hung it straight and strong, then the back step, then the kitchen cabinet that always squeaked. It wasn't about fixing everything. It was about showing the kids what it looked like to not give up. At one point, Luke looked up at Ethan and said, "You're not like most rich guys, are you?" Ethan smiled. "I used to be." Luke nodded. "Well, I like the new you better." The next morning the rain was gone, and the house smelled like fresh wood and pancakes. Ethan walked into the living room to find Claire reading a letter. She looked up, her face pale. "Everything okay?" he asked. She hesitated, then handed him the paper. It was from the county office. A lien had been placed on the property by a contractor her late husband had hired years ago. A debt he never paid. If the lien wasn't cleared, the county could seize the house within 60 days, even though the deed now belonged to Claire. Ethan read the letter 3 times. "This can't be happening," Claire whispered. "I thought it was finally over." "It will be," Ethan said firmly. "I'll handle it." "No," she said quickly. This is looked at him, eyes wide. "And besides," he added, "what kind of man would I be if I let a broken door or an old debt take this place from you after everything?" She finally smiled. A small one. But it was real. Ethan contacted his legal team. For once, he didn't use them to outmaneuver someone, but to protect someone. The lien was valid, but the debt had doubled from interest and shady fine print. "I want it paid," he told his lawyer. "But I also want the contractor investigated." He preyed on a grieving woman. By the end of the week, not only had the lien been cleared, but the contractor's license was under review. Ethan didn't stop at helping Claire. He started fighting for others in town who had been taken advantage of too. He funded a legal assistance program. He started a home repair fund for single mothers. He partnered with a local trade school to offer discounted work from students learning the craft, and all of it started with that broken door. One night, Claire came out to the porch and found Ethan sitting in the old rocking chair sipping tea. She sat beside him. "Why do you keep doing all this?" she asked softly. "Because I see myself in every broken door, every cracked wall, every family trying to hold on." He looked at her, his eyes calm. "And because if we don't fight for each other, who will?" Claire rested her head on his shoulder. They said nothing more. The house behind them was quiet, safe, and whole again. Word spread fast in a small town. By the time Ethan helped repair the broken bathroom door and cleared Claire's lien, nearly everyone in Granger had heard the story. At first, it came in whispers. "You hear that billionaire didn't evict her after all?" "I heard he paid off her debt out of his own pocket. No way, those people don't care about us." But then people started to see it for themselves. Ethan was showing up, not with news cameras or fanfare, but quietly, with a toolbox in his hand or a check folded in his back pocket. He'd help an elderly couple fix their front steps. He sat down with the local mayor to ask why the community centre had lost funding. He even showed up at Luke's school one day to talk about bullying. He never said much. But when he did speak, people listened, and slowly the town started changing because of him. One Saturday morning, Ethan was at the town diner. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee clung to the air like a familiar song. He sat in the corner booth, reading the local paper. Claire was across from him, sipping coffee while Emma colored on a napkin. The waitress June refilled his cup. "Never thought I'd see the day when you became one of us," she said with a grin. Ethan smiled. "Me neither." "You know, folks are talking," she added, leaning in. "You've changed things, Mr. Walker." He nodded slowly. "That's the goal." June tapped the table gently. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop. This town remembers those who care and those who don't." Later that week, Claire took Ethan on a walk through Granger's old part of town, the run-down strip of small businesses that had long been forgotten. Broken windows, boarded-up stores, an old barber shop with a faded sign. "Granger Cuts. Since 1958, this used to be the heart of the town," she said quietly, "before the factories shut down, before people lost hope." Ethan looked around. "What if we brought it back?" Claire frowned. "Brought what back?" "This place, the block, the shops." She laughed. "You're not serious." "I am," he said. "What if we bought up this stretch, restored the buildings and invited people back? Local businesses, apprenticeships, coffee shops, a daycare." "Something real." Claire stared at him. "You really believe it could work?" "I believe it's worth trying." That night he drafted a plan. He called it the Granger Project. Ethan invested a modest amount by his standards, but it was life-changing to the people of Granger. He didn't just rebuild shops, he created jobs, partnered with a local high school to offer business classes, donated to food drives, hired single parents and veterans first, made sure every building was accessible, safe, and run by people who lived in Granger, not out-of-town companies. In 1 month, 5 businesses reopened. By the end of 2 months, there were 10. He didn't slap his name on anything. He didn't hold press conferences, but every sidewalk was a piece of his heart. One morning, a boy stopped him outside the community bakery. "You're the rich guy, right?" the boy asked. Ethan crouched down. "Some people say that." "My mom said you saved our town." Ethan smiled. "I think your town saved me." The boy grinned and ran off. Ethan stood up slowly, watching him disappear down the street. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man trying to outrun a lonely life. He felt like a man becoming part of something. Meanwhile, Claire had begun teaching baking classes at the community center. She'd started small, just cupcakes and cookies, but the kids loved her. She became known as Miss Claire with the sweet hands. Luke started making friends. Maya joined a reading group. Emma danced every morning in the kitchen. And Claire, she laughed again. Not just the polite kind, the real deep kind that shakes your chest and makes your eyes water, Ethan noticed. "You look lighter," he said one night. "I feel lighter," she replied. Then she looked at him. "So do you." The town held its first community fair in 10 years that fall. Booths lined the street. Kids played games. There was music and laughter. For a town that had nearly given up, it felt like breathing again. Ethan stood with Claire near the stage as the mayor spoke into a microphone. "This year," the mayor said, "we honor someone who reminded us what community means, who came here to do business, and instead helped us build something better." Ethan's name was called. He froze. The crowd clapped, whistled. Even June, the waitress, shouted, "Get up there, city boy!" Ethan stepped onto the stage, hands in his pockets. He took the microphone and cleared his throat. "I didn't come here to save anyone," he said. "I came here thinking I had it all figured out. But the truth is, I didn't know what living really meant until I came to Granger." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "Everything I thought mattered, money, success, power, none of it means anything without people, without home, without hope. And this town gave me all of that. So, thank you for saving me." The crowd cheered. Claire wiped her eyes. Luke fist-pumped the air. Maya clapped and Emma danced. As the sun set that evening, Ethan and Claire walked down the newly painted sidewalk, hand in hand. Music played faintly behind them. "You really think it's going to last?" she asked. "I do," he said, "because it's not my town anymore. It's ours." She smiled. "Granger remembers, huh?" He nodded. "And now, so will I." Ethan had just finished helping Luke patch a hole in the chicken wire fence when Claire called from the porch. "Mail's here." He dusted off his hands and walked over. The kids had scattered into the yard, chasing the dog they'd adopted from the shelter. Laughter filled the air, warm and easy. Claire handed him a small stack of envelopes. Most were junk. A few were invitations from new businesses in town. But one caught his eye, a plain white envelope, no return address, handwritten. The moment he touched it, something shifted in his chest. He stepped away from the porch and opened it slowly. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, and as he read it, the world seemed to pause. "Dear Ethan, I don't know if you remember me. I wasn't someone important in your life. Just a man who once worked for your father, years ago, when you were still a teenager. But I remember you. You were the boy who sat in the back of that big office building, drawing houses on napkins. You said you wanted to build homes one day. Not just mansions, but places people could feel safe in. I never forgot that. I'm writing to tell you I've seen what you've done in Granger, and I'm proud of you. But there's something you deserve to know. Your father, he wasn't just hard on people, he was cruel. I stayed quiet back then, but I shouldn't have. He hurt more families than anyone will ever count. I was one of them. And so were you. What you're doing now, helping people. You're not just fixing buildings. You're fixing the damage he left behind. And I hope you know, you are not him. You never were. Thank you for becoming the man you once dreamed of being. The world is better with you in it. Sincerely, Thomas M. Ethan read the letter twice, then a third time. His hands trembled slightly as he folded it back up. Claire had been watching from the porch. "Bad news?" she asked softly, walking over. He shook his head. "No, not bad. Just unexpected." He handed her the letter. She read it quietly, her eyes tracing each line with care. When she finished, she looked at him, her voice gentle. "Do you believe it?" Ethan nodded. "I think I have to." For years, Ethan had avoided thinking about his father. A man who believed kindness was weakness, who raised him with iron words and cold eyes, who taught him to win, but never to care. Ethan had spent most of his life trying to prove he could be better, stronger, smarter, but deep down, he'd always feared one thing, that he was becoming just like him. Until now. Until this letter. Later. That evening, Ethan sat on the porch steps alone, the letter in his hand. Luke came over carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "Here," he said. "You looked like you needed this." Ethan smiled. "Thanks, buddy." Luke sat down beside him. "Was that letter from someone important?" Ethan thought about it. "Yes," he said, "very important. Family. Not by blood, but maybe by heart." Luke leaned back. "I hope I grow up to be like you." Ethan's throat tightened. "You will," he said. "And better." The next day, Ethan framed the letter and hung it inside the Granger Community Center near the entrance. He added a small plaque beneath it that read, "The past can't be changed, but the future can be built. One kind choice at a time." People asked about it. Some even teared up when they read it. And slowly, the story of the boy who grew up in shadows but chose to shine became part of the town's own story. Weeks passed. Ethan reached out to Thomas, sending a thank you letter of his own. He never got a reply. But that was okay, because some people are messengers. They don't stay. They simply show up when they're needed, say what must be said, and disappear like wind through leaves. Thomas had given Ethan something he didn't even know he was missing: peace. And now Ethan carried it like armor, not hard and cold like his old suits, but soft and strong like the voice he used when Emma couldn't sleep, or when Claire got quiet on hard days. He was no longer a man trying to outrun his past. He was a man building a different future. One morning, Claire found him scribbling again, on a napkin of all things. She laughed. "You and your napkin sketches. It's where all the best plans begin," he said. "What's this one?" He turned it around. It was a rough design of a home, not big, not fancy, but strong, cozy, safe. "Thinking about a housing project," he said. "Affordable homes, built by people here, for people here." Claire studied the drawing, then smiled. "Looks like home." Ethan smiled back. "That's the idea." It had been a good few months. The town was thriving. The Granger project was growing. New families were moving in. Children were laughing again in places that had once been silent. And in the heart of it all stood Ethan. No longer a billionaire outsider, but a man people nodded to on the street, whose name showed up on thank you notes pinned to bulletin boards and bakery windows. But the storm was coming, and this time it wasn't made of rain or thunder. It started with a phone call. Ethan was in the middle of helping Claire prepare lunch for a local fundraiser when his assistant Melissa rang. He almost didn't answer. Granger had become his whole world now. But the name flashing on the screen was from his past. He stepped outside to take the call. "Ethan," Melissa said, her voice tight, "you need to know something. There's a man, a corporate lawyer named Derek Hayes. He's digging into your finances, says he's acting on behalf of your late father's estate." Ethan frowned. "That estate closed years ago." "I know, but this man claims your father left a private trust account with a clause that activates if you misuse assets to support non-commercial causes." Ethan's heart dropped. "You think he's targeting the Granger work?" "Yes," she said, "and he's already filed an intent to freeze your accounts." Silence. "Ethan?" she asked. He didn't answer. He was staring out across the town, the rebuilt storefronts, the school he'd helped repaint, the families who had found hope again. If they froze his accounts, it could all stop. That evening, he told Claire. Everything. She sat on the porch swing, holding a mug of tea that had gone cold. "So, because you're helping people, your own father's lawyers are trying to punish you." He nodded. "It's a clause I never knew existed. A twisted way to keep me focused on profit." Claire looked away, jaw tight. "That man really controlled everything, didn't he, even from the grave?" Ethan sat beside her. "I'm going to fight this," he said. "I'll use everything I've learned. I won't let this town pay for my father's greed." Tato was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "We'll fight it too." The town heard within days. Word spread fast in Granger, faster than email, faster than news articles. The man who saved them was now the one who needed saving. And the town responded. Luke started a petition at school. Over 300 students signed. Miss June from the diner started a Keep Granger Standing tip jar. Families who had never spoken publicly before came forward with letters, videos, stories, all about how Ethan's work had changed their lives. Retired judge in town offered to help his legal team. A news reporter from the state capital came to cover the story. The people who once saw Ethan as a threat were now forming a wall around him. But the pressure kept building. Ethan's accounts were partially frozen. Construction on 3 new homes halted. The youth center's expansion paused. And Claire's bakery program, just weeks away from opening its own storefront, sat in limbo. He walked the streets one evening, hands in his pockets, shoulders heavy. He didn't wear suits anymore, just flannel and jeans. He passed Maya and Emma drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk. Emma looked up and asked, "Are the bad guys winning, Mr. Ethan?" He knelt down beside her. "Not if we keep loving each other," he said. She handed him a piece of blue chalk. "Then draw a heart too." And he did. Right there on the concrete, a grown man on his knees scribbling a heart beside a child's. That weekend, Claire found him at the community center, staring at boxes of bakery supplies that couldn't be unpacked. "You okay?" she asked. He turned. "I'm trying to figure out how to explain to the town that I might have failed them." She stepped closer. "You didn't fail anyone. You gave us something to believe in again." Ethan looked at her, eyes heavy. "What? If it all disappears, Claire?" She took his hand. "Then we build it again, together, from scratch if we have to." The court date was set. Ethan's legal team flew in. So did Derek Hayes, cold-eyed and sharp-tongued, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the community center's entire monthly budget. Get Ethan sat beside his lawyer, the courtroom filled with townspeople, not hired speakers, not reporters, just people who cared. Claire was there. So was Luke, in his best shirt, holding a letter he'd written to the judge. The judge reviewed the documents. The clause existed. But the judge paused when she saw the stack of testimonials submitted from the town, handwritten letters, signed statements, photographs, before and after pictures of homes, businesses, families, and finally, Ethan stood. He didn't use big words. He didn't quote law. He simply said, "If being human is a violation of my father's trust, then maybe that trust was broken long before I touched it." The courtroom was silent. The judge looked down. Then she smiled. "Just barely. Motion denied," she ruled. "The trust clause is vague, and the impact of Mr. Walker's actions has clearly been positive, not personal gain. His assets are to be unfrozen immediately." The courtroom exploded in applause. Ethan sat down slowly. Claire grabbed his hand. "You did it," she whispered. The morning after the court victory, the sun rose over Granger in soft golden light. Ethan stood on the porch of the very first house built under the Granger project, a modest, sturdy home with white siding, blue shutters, and a flower box beneath the window. He looked at it and smiled. This house wasn't just a building, it was a symbol, a promise that people deserved more than cold bricks and empty words. They deserved a place where laughter lived and hope grew. Claire joined him on the porch, carrying a basket of fresh muffins. "Feels different now," she said. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "Like the town, and maybe even I, can finally breathe." Emma skipped up the steps and tugged his hand. "Let's go inside. I want to show you my new room." Ethan laughed and followed. Inside, the house smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Luke pointed proudly to the bookshelves they'd built together. Maya showed off the garden outside, where she'd planted sunflowers. And Claire? Well, Claire just smiled, happy to see the family she'd helped build finally settled. Weeks later, Ethan stood at a podium during a ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Today," he said, "we celebrate more than just a house. We celebrate what happens when a community comes together to build something real." The crowd cheered. Ethan looked out at the faces, hopeful, smiling, alive. He thought about the letter from Thomas, the storm that tried to break them, and the long road that brought him here. And for the first time, he didn't feel like he was running from his past. He was standing in his future. That evening, back at the house, Ethan and Claire sat on the porch swing, watching the stars blink awake. He turned to her and said, "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Claire smiled. "You never stopped believing in Granger, that's all that mattered." He squeezed her hand. "Maybe this town saved me," he said softly. "Maybe you saved it right back." They sat in silence, the kind that only comes when two people know they've come home. Years passed since Ethan first arrived in Granger. The town had transformed completely, not just in buildings, but in spirit. Where once there was fear, there was trust. Where once there was silence, there was laughter. And where once stood a man lost in shadows, now stood a man who belonged. Ethan watched as Claire opened a new community bakery on Main Street. The sign read, "Claire's Sweet Haven." Kids filled the shop every afternoon, learning to bake and dream. Luke and Maya were growing up too, leaders in their school, known for kindness and courage. Emma danced in the park, her laughter ringing clear across the town square. At a ceremony, in the newly built town hall, Ethan was honored, not as a billionaire, but as a friend, a neighbor, a part of the community's heart. He stood before the crowd, his voice steady. "Granger taught me that real wealth isn't measured by dollars or possessions. It's measured by the strength of our bonds, the kindness we share, and the hope we carry forward." He paused and looked out at the faces that had become his family. "This town saved me from the man I was meant to be. And together, we built the man I want to be." After the ceremony, Claire approached him with a small box. Inside was a key. "To what?" he asked. "To the community center," she said, eyes shining. "You gave us a place to gather, to grow. Now it's yours. Open to everyone forever." Ethan took the key and smiled. "This isn't just a place," he said. "It's a legacy." That night, Ethan sat on his porch, looking at the stars. He thought about the long road, the eviction notice, the broken family, the fights, the fears. He thought about the letter from Thomas, the storm that almost broke them, and the hope that never faded. And he knew, without a doubt, this was only the beginning. The legacy of kindness, of hope, of second chances, that was the true fortune. And Ethan Walker was proud to carry it forward.